4th, Douglas County Board of County Commissioners Business Meeting. I am getting some feedback.
That might be me.
Oh, okay. You're fine. We want to welcome all of you who are with us here today in the Douglas County Courthouse, as well as those of you joining us online. I do just want to pass on a bit of information regarding how we'll run our meeting in this hybrid format. All participants joining us online will be entered into the meeting with their audio muted, meaning the commission and the public will not be able to hear you. Presenters will be unmuted when their agenda item comes up. We ask that all online presenters use good conference call etiquette and mute their line when not speaking and introduce themselves each time they speak. If you have public comment on an agenda item or under regular public comment, if you're joining us here in person today, please come to the front of the room. If you are on Zoom, please use the raise your hand function. Staff will call on you and unmute you. We ask that speakers give their name and address for the minutes. The county reserves the right to shut off the microphone and remove any speaker from the meeting if they are vulgar, rude, or inappropriate. We ask that all public comments be kept to around 3 minutes. A recording of this meeting will be available on our website after the meeting. We will get started this evening with our consent agenda. I would like to go ahead and pull item 1.4, our audit, from the consent agenda. Would commissioners like to pull anything else from the consent agenda?
No.
Do we have anyone present who would like to pull anything else from our consent agenda? Anyone online wishing to pull anything from the consent agenda?
I don't see anyone.
Okay. We'd like to go ahead and.
This is Commissioner Reed. I move to approve today's consent agenda with the exception of item 1.4.
Second.
All of those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we will go ahead and have general public comment before moving on to agenda items. Do we have anyone present today for general public comment? Anyone online for public comment?
No.
Okay, then we will start with item 1.4. I really just wanted to pull our audit out so that we could have a chance to discuss it as a commission. And I believe that Brooke is here to walk us through it a bit.
Yes, I'm going to let Brooke Sauer with our admin team kick it off. And then I know Tara Laughlin is here with an auditing firm as well. Go ahead, Brooke.
Thanks.
Thank you, Jill, and thank you, commissioners, for the opportunity to discuss the 2020 audited financials. I'd like to turn it over to Tara Laughlin. She's the Vice President of Assurance for Allen Gibbs and Hulick to discuss the independent auditor's report for fiscal year ended December 31st, 2020.
Good evening, commissioners. As Brooke mentioned, I'm Tara Laughlin with Allen Gibbs and Hulick. I'm a vice president in our government assurance practice. And so tonight I will kind of just walk through the audit results, kind of how we've done in years past. You all did receive a letter that has the required communications. And I'm just going to kind of walk through that letter specifically for items specific to this year's audit and not just kind of the general every year kind of communications. So first off, we do perform the financial statement external audit for the county. And this is to ensure that the financial information within the financial statements materially reflect the books and records for the county for fiscal year 2020. We issued an unmodified opinion or a clean opinion on those financial statements, which means that those financials do materially reflect the books and records for the county for the fiscal year. There are certain items under government auditing standards that we are required to communicate. First off, the county did not implement any new accounting standards this year. So the county issues under the KMAG regulatory requirement, which is allowable by state statute, as long as that is elected during the year, which the county always does. So what that means is the financial statements are presented pretty much to reflect budget results. So it mirrors your budget process and your budget tracking throughout the year versus a GAAP financial statement, which has a bunch of additional requirements and accruals that aren't necessarily budget accounting. So there was no new changes to how KMAG reports are presented this year. There are still some accounting estimates in the footnote disclosures of your financial statements. So those aren't hard, fast, known numbers, but under the KMAG requirements, they are still required to be disclosed, even though they're not reflected dollar-wise on the face of the financial statements. There are no new accounting estimates this year, but the three significant estimates in those footnote disclosures are related to compensated absences. So it is reported, how much employees have earned and haven't used yet of their vacation, sick leave. Incurred but not reported claims for health insurance. The county is self-insured for health insurance, so that estimated liability is required to be presented as well. And then the county share of the net pension liability, which is the share of the CAPERS liability. The CAPERS plan at the plan level gets audited and allocates all that out to the participating municipalities and entities that participate in CAPERS. And so we disclose what the county share is of that allocation. As far as those estimates go, we attain an understanding from management about how those estimates are calculated and done, and we review the inputs, calculations, outputs of those estimates. And we found all those estimates that are disclosed in the footnotes are being done reasonably. So no significant issues there. We are required to go over audit adjustments as well, and those are outlined in the letter too. These are all pretty similar ones to what we do annually, and annually we do audit adjustments for the county just because of how the county system works. Not so much that items aren't necessarily being tracked. It's just transitioning system to financial reporting. The first one is to kind of re-record that activity that happened last year to this year. And that primarily relates to encumbrances. So the city's system tracks encumbrances and they provide us reports and tell us how much those are, but we have to physically get them reflected within the financial statements. So that does happen during the audit process. But that's what the first one is related to. The second one is one that we don't have every year because the county does not issue crossover refunding bonds very often or rarely. And that was done during fiscal year 2020. So that just, and all that information is tracked by a trustee in a bank account that the county reviews, but that cash never physically flows to a county account. So it doesn't get into the accounting system. So it's kind of like an off balance sheet transaction. So it's all being tracked by the trustee and we just kind of fold it in to show that cash sitting there until those refunding bonds are paid off, which I think the crossover date is maybe not next year, but the year after on those. So the cash is just kind of sitting there until those bonds can be officially called and paid off with the bondholders. The third one then is one that we do. It's similar. It's kind of an off balance sheet item. And it's related to that self-insurance. Every year, kind of evaluate what that incurred but not reported claim balance is for the payable side. And we just adjust that annually up or down depending on what the new balance is for that payable. So those are the three audit adjustments. Again, all pretty common audit adjustments for KMAG reporting entities. The next requirement to go over is unkryptomy statements. And I always like to explain this term because it sounds worse than what it is. So unkryptomy statements are items that come up during the audit process and they're of a dollar value that management does not determine to be material. And we evaluate it through all of our standards and we agree with management that it's not material enough to reflect it as an audit adjustment. And they're all timing issues. So if it's not reflected in 2020, it's pretty much automatically fix itself in 2021. And that usually relates to some accounts payable items at year end. It's a timing issue. This year, we actually had no new unkryptomy statements. The one noted in the letter is actually the reversal of last year. So if it's on 1 year, it has to come off the next year. That's what the item is that's in the letter this year. Kind of buried in the middle of the letter, I always like to point out, is we had no disagreements with management throughout the audit process. Everybody's always very responsive to our requests, get our requests timely, works with us when we have questions. So overall, Sarah, Brooke, Cami, a bunch of people in that finance, payroll, AP area. It's a lot of extra responsibility on top of their day-to-day job. So just want to appreciate the staff for their help throughout the audit process. Kind of continuing on into the letter, and this is an item we do have every year. It's just kind of the way the system's set up. And it's related to purchase orders and segregation of duties related to purchase orders and the approval process for those items. There are, however, mitigating controls in place as far as, purchases are approved again, during the regular purchasing process. It's just the upfront people that can put purchase orders into the system. But we do like to communicate that annually, just really to make sure that those mitigating controls stay in place and don't disappear. Because if they did, then it would be a bigger concern. The rest of the letter then is information that we share with all of our clients, whether they're government, not-for-profit, corporate industries, of just various risks that are out there in the environment today. The biggest one being information security risks. With all the remoting and increasing ransomware attacks, we just like to give that information to the board. So it's just something that you consider throughout the year as well. Overall, again, very clean audit. We issued an unmodified clean opinion, no disagreements with management, and kind of the normal audit adjustments that we have annually. So I will open it up to any questions any of the commissioners may have.
I don't have any questions. I do just want to say a huge thank you for walking through that with us. I think that is just important for us to kind of hear the details and make sure that we're going over everything with the audit annually, but it's very nice to hear how well the staff is working with the auditors and how well things are going when it comes to all of our financials. So thank you. Any
Welcome.
questions?
This is Commissioner Reed. I don't have any questions either, but I will just echo those sentiments and appreciate Commissioner Portillo for pulling this, because that executive summary, Tara, was super helpful for me with such a dense document. So I appreciate that.
Not a problem.
No questions. I just want to give a woot woot for Brooke and her team, because this was CARES Act, wasn't it? And that made this audit even more difficult. Am I correct on that, Brooke?
That will be coming up. So that was our
Okay.
single audit, but I highly suspect that some of that $3 million was funds encumbered for the CARES Act in that audit adjustment, that very first bullet. So, but yes, that one's coming up.
Yeah, we did audit the revenues and the expenses from a reporting aspect, but the compliance audit will be part of that single audit that's coming up in the future.
Well, then I withdraw my woot woot. No, I don't. Great job, Brooke. I mean, I know this is a ton of work, and I know the county should be very proud. We are very proud of the financial controls that are in place, and to get such a clean opinion is just fantastic. And thanks again for all your work.
Thank you, commissioners. I really do appreciate that. And honestly, I could not do it without all of the support from most of the departments at the county. As Tara mentioned, there are handfuls of employees at the county that provide support for this audit function. And I am ever so thankful to all of them for their help too. So thank you guys. I really appreciate it.
And since we did pull this, we'll open this up for questions from the public. Is there anyone here in the courthouse with us today who has questions on this agenda item? Anyone online?
No.
Thank you so much, Brooke, and thank you very much, Tara, for the overview. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Okay, we will move on to,
We need a motion to approve, don't we?
thank you.
I'll make a motion to accept the 2020 financial statement as prepared.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, we will move on to regular agenda item 3.1, Planning Department, consider text amendment TA 21-00090.
Mary, you'll want to turn on the mic.
Good evening, Mary Miller, Planning Office, and I have a short PowerPoint that I think I'm going to be able to share my screen with. No, maybe is Robin where we can get to her. It says it's disabled. If we could enable.
Hi, Mary. This is Robin. I'll put it on for you.
Thank you. It's a very short PowerPoint, but it just shows the urban growth area. This text amendment was brought about after Eudora, as part of Eudora's process to develop their urban growth area. So they, many years ago, they worked through a process to set up an urban growth area, but that would require having a joint planning commission, and they got very far in the process and didn't finish. So they went through a more abbreviated process this time, and it was done through an interlocal agreement with the County Commission. Thank you. And so We can go to the next page. Let's see, can I just go to the next page? Yeah, this shows their boundaries. County staff, we've worked with the city of Eudora to develop their boundaries. Tier 1 is everything that's in the city limits, or there's some island and island county land, but it's all in Tier 1. Tier 2 is highlighted in yellow. And when you do a urban growth area with an interlocal agreement, you're still subject to the county subdivision regulations and zoning regulations. And the city of Eudora wanted to set some limitations on what development could happen in Tier 2. Basically, they don't want new land divisions until the property is annexed. And so part of the interlocal agreement stated that it would be in effect once these subdivision regulations were revised, setting that as a restriction. So in the draft language, you'll see there was an old section of the subdivision regulations that prevented land divisions in section 1 of the Lawrence urban growth area, which now with Plan 2040, we no longer divide the urban growth area up into sections. So that's being deleted. And we're just adding language for the Eudora urban growth area and noting that in Tier 2, no new land divisions are possible until it's annexed, except for those exemptions that are allowed by the subregs, the 20-acre exemptions and homestead exemptions. Or if there was property that was previously platted or preliminary platted, they may be able to go ahead and replat or finish platting. But if the city of Eudora decides, that can happen without annexation. So it's possible, but it's not proven or a guarantee. And so that is, let me go next slide. I'm sorry, I just explained that. We can go to the next slide. So the Planning Commission voted unanimously to forward this amendment to you with a recommendation for approval. So this is on your agenda for approval today, and there is also a joint ordinance resolution for adoption for this change. And then once this is done and it goes to the city of Lawrence and the subregs are updated, then the city of Eudora's UGA will be finalized, and then it will be shown on our GIS maps and all our zoning maps. And so that ends my presentation, but I'm happy to answer questions if you have any for me.
Thank you, Mary. I don't have any questions.
Mary, I have a quick question. And I hate to do this to Robin, but can you go back to that map?
Robin, can you put that up again?
And maybe we don't need the map, but
Oh.
there,
It'll be here in just a
you
minute.
said that if it was an island within the city incorporate, and there is one large chunk that just sort of sits. Can you talk about that a little bit? Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, can you pull up the map up there?
See right there, sort of dead center in the map, there's that one square that seems to be almost, I don't know how many acres that is. But is that not included in Tier 1 because it's not an island? I mean, it's not exactly an island. You see what I'm getting at
Kind
there?
of shaded gray is Tier 1.
Right. And then we have Tier 2, which is
Yellow.
that yellow zone. And see right next to where it says Church Street, there's sort of that large yellow chunk right there. I just found that sort of interesting.
Oh. Yeah, because that's not completely surrounded by city limits. You know, they have some really small lots within the city, just 1 or 2 lots that's surrounded completely by city, and they consider that Tier 1. And so basically no development can occur on those until they annex. So it's much more restrictive if you're in Tier 1. And I assume the reason that square wasn't included is it's surrounded on most sides, but it's very large. It's not just an isolated lot. So.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
We will open this up for public questions. Do we have any questions from folks joining us here in the courthouse today? Any questions from anyone online?
I'm not seeing any.
Okay, we will bring it back for discussion from commissioners.
I mean, I don't have any questions or comments to make, but I'm happy to make a motion if other commissioners are ready.
Go ahead.
Have to get back to the right tab. Commissioner Reed here. I move to approve a text amendment TA 21-00090 to revise the subdivision regulations for Lawrence and the unincorporated areas of Douglas County, Kansas to accommodate the Eudora urban growth area per the interlocal agreement approved by the Board of County Commissioners on October 21st, 2020, and adopt joint ordinance number 9852. Resolution number is not noted, but I don't know if that matters, Robin.
26.
Oh, okay.
Commissioner Reed, I've assigned the number. I believe it's on Commissioner Portillo's desk. 2127.
Yes, so I will just amend that motion to say joint ordinance number 9852, resolution number 2127.
Second.
All of those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we will move on to Douglas, item 3.2, Douglas County Correctional Facility Maintenance Project.
Commissioners, Jay Zimmershed, our Director of Capital Projects, is going to kick off this agenda item. And then I know that Sheriff Armbrister's here along with members of his team that may add on and answer questions, but Jay's going to get us started.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for having me here to discuss the Douglas County Correctional Facility Deferred Maintenance Project. I think you have all seen this before, not too awful long back, although there's have been some adjustments and edits to that as we've gone through it. So I can tell you that I'll go through a lot of information here really fast. If you want to interrupt me, please do. But I can tell you when I first came to the county in 2019, one of the first facilities I toured was the jail. And given previous lives, I've been through in a number of jails, and I can tell you that this facility is very, very well kept, not just in terms of cleanliness, but yes, very much so. I've been in a number of jails, and they're not all like that. The evolution of the deferred maintenance project really stems from a larger project that has been set aside, but embedded in that project were a number of these deferred maintenance pieces that we're really needing to address in the existing building, because we're now approaching, I believe we're right at 25 years in terms of age and all the equipment. I think it's important to note that correctional facilities are much like hospitals or other project types that literally weren't run 24/7, 365. There's no setback at night when everybody goes home, and then it catches up tomorrow. So this facility really came online in 1997 and has been running ever since. And so that's some of the need for the idea of doing some of this deferred maintenance piece now. Obviously, even before, but now maybe even more prevalent in the days of COVID, trying to do this kind of work in an emergency mode is really very challenging. Others can talk about the construction industry and the way that supply chains have been challenged and production is kind of slowed, where only the critical pieces are being done. So trying to do this in an intelligent fashion in lieu of an emergency response is is critical and paramount here. As part of pulling all these projects out of the other project that has been set aside, we had contracts in place for the design team and for a CM that were selected specifically to do some of these pieces. And so we the county kind of got together and decided that it would be ideal to keep those contracts in place and utilize those contracts to go ahead and accomplish these deferred maintenance pieces, which is how we have Turner representation. Kyle Gardner is here from Turner Construction. I believe there might be others online, I'm not sure, but in Trainer Architects, I believe Jeff Lane is also virtually attending the meeting. And so we developed the contracts to go through, really took a hard look at the existing building to make sure we were catching as many of these kind of deferred maintenance pieces that made sense to go ahead and do now. And that's led us to the scope that you have before you. I think it's all in your packet. I can run through those very, very quickly. They include the central plant, which is replacement of the boiler and chiller. Again, part of having a CM on board allows us to they will schedule and work very closely with the sheriff's department. So we're replacing the chillers in the, in the winter and the boilers in the summer. So we're replacing all this stuff that keeps the facility constantly functional and always operational. Elevator upgrades, the brain components of the elevators that they're using aren't serviceable anymore. It's a bit like a computer with DOS or something. It just, they don't support it anymore. So we're approaching 30 years and they're just needing replacement and updating of that equipment. The sliding detention doors are another big item that you'll see in there. And those are very, very, very heavy doors, 14 gauge doors that slide on a mechanism. I'm not sure I could lift half of that door with the other half on the floor. And so the mechanisms above those are wearing out. And again, they cycle daily, very, very frequently, especially in the hallways and then also in the maximum security max cell. And so including those doors and getting those doors right for moving along into the future is critical. I can tell you that's probably one of the biggest maintenance pieces that they have is maintenance staff having to work and keep those doors kind of running. So also in the max cell, we have plumbing lines that are looking to be replaced. They were installed in 1997 as in cast iron, which was common at that time. If they did that today, you would see it in PVC, which is what they're suggesting going back with. They're having, they've had some leak problems and rusting out problems associated with cast iron, which is why industry has moved away from it. And then a couple of the other pieces that are included in this is working on the parking lot again. It's 25 years old and it's just needing potholes fixed, curb and gutter fixed, portions that are bad removed and repaired. And then resealing of the exterior building envelope. Basically, all we're trying to do there, sealant only has a life, but it's not a 25-year life, but sealing the building back up to keep water from getting in and starting to work on and damage other components on the envelope of the building. So, so all of those pieces are included in this, and it's very much intended to take this building and carry it well into the future. Again, the bones of the building are great. We're replacing the heart and many of the other pieces here. And so we think this is a good defined package to keep that facility operational for a long time. On the budget side of things, when we were here before, I believe we were around 4 million, roughly a little more than $4 million. After having gone back through and looked at the project and really looking at the building and all the various pieces, the budget that's before you today is, I believe it's, I'm sorry, 5.6 roughly million. That includes a couple of pieces that we discovered in some further review. We needed to replace the domestic water and fire suppression pumps. We're kind of on the fringe of town, and water pressure out there is not what it traditionally would be. And so we have those pumps in place if the fire alarm or if the fire suppression system goes off, or when the domestic water is being used, we have a pump there to keep the pressure high enough so that it functions for the facility. Again, those are 24 years old and they all have, a bladder that holds water. And when you're doing that, those things tend to rust. And so that was some added scope. We added additional detention sliding door maintenance. We didn't have all of the doors in the project. You can see there's an exhibit in the back of the building, or in the back, exhibit L, that identifies all the doors we're doing. We didn't have all those doors originally, but we now have all those doors collected and correcting them to ensure good operation. And then there's the notion of kind of what the construction marketplace is doing right now. It's a little crazy in terms of the way pricing is going, and supply chains are struggling, and various other things that are adding to the cost of construction. So part of the increase that you're seeing is also an increase in contingency dollars to be sure that we're covered as we move forward, and we're not going to run into a situation where units have escalated significantly from the time we start the project. Because again, we're staging some of this work to make sure we're working with the facility and keeping them operational all the time. There are sufficient funds within the CIP to do this. There would require a little bit of reallocation from, we kind of had two projects identified. It would require a reallocation of some of those funds to go from the 4 million up to the 5.6. And that, but those funds are in place and ready to go. So we are at the precipice and really ready to kind of get going and started on the project. So with that, I would stand for any questions or encourage if you'd like to hear from others.
This is Commissioner Portillo. Thank you so much for that presentation. I guess my question really just has to do with that increase in cost. I recognize that construction costs are growing at pretty ridiculous rates right now. And there's some kind of getting more details about the project. Some of them may be more expensive than we originally anticipated. This is the guaranteed maximum price proposal, so we won't exceed this amount at this point. Is that correct? So it could be that we come in under this rate?
Correct. It is a GMP, guaranteed maximum price. And so on the owner soft cost side, certainly we are showing and carrying contingency dollars that are project related, but not part of the GMP. And if those dollars are not used, certainly they'd be just reallocated back into where they came from. And so it's not anticipated that, you know, we're going to run beyond these numbers, but we're just being careful because there's some really weird things going on in the construction industry. So did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Do we have any other questions from commissioners?
Just Commissioner Kelly, Jay, I don't know that we've talked about this, but a lot has happened since we first talked about this maintenance project. Was there any discussion, you mentioned boilers and chillers, for ventilation and increased filtration of air since we're doing this work? I know that quite a bit of federal dollars are earmarked towards changing that. Was that a discussion at all? And if no, that's fine. I just was interested.
I would have to defer that. If you're asking, are we taking additional steps to purify and work on the air? I would have to defer that to the consultant, to be honest, but I believe those pieces are, I believe they're being integrated into the project. Yes. There is nothing. Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I think that's correct. We would be replacing the units with more efficient units. We'd get better air distribution, but to say that we're taking unusual or special steps to purify that air differently than the code requires, no, we're not.
This is Commissioner Reed. My question is probably best directed towards Sheriff Armbruster. I was just curious if you could speak a little bit to kind of what the sheriff's, what the officers' plans are for folks who are incarcerated. As you know, I'm thinking, especially being familiar with the jail, about when the doors are being changed and how that might, like the amount of time that might take and how it impacts like movement or the amount of time that people are locked down for certain things. So I just wonder if you could speak to how, I know some of it you won't know until you start actually setting dates and have workers coming in,
Right.
but are you thinking about those things and how to minimize impact?
Oh, yeah. So we've been in discussions and planning for this all along, actually, because just having outside workers in our facility creates a whole new dynamic as far as getting them into the housing units, making sure everything's taken care of, making sure everybody gets their free time. It's our absolute goal is to make sure that they're guaranteed basic minimums of, sanitation and personal time and that kind of stuff. We will adhere to strictly, but we obviously go above and beyond as much as we can to allow them more time than what is just the bare minimum. And we think we have kind of a plan to where we can just kind of shift and move people so as to just move, kind of section off a place so as they can get their work done and we can do things that these folks need to do in another area. Am I saying that we won't or that we won't affect people's free times and the phone calls and the visitations? I can never make that guarantee, but their ability to contact their loved ones is actually one of our top priorities, because if they're able to communicate with their family and friends, it actually makes for a much better environment for us and for them as well. So that's something that we will do our very best on. Does that answer your question? I hope so.
It does. Thank you, Sheriff.
Yep.
I just, and I appreciate you being thoughtful about it. I know that inevitably there's impacts to be
Right.
had. And it's just important to me that we are thinking about what that impact is on the folks that are there and like minimizing the restriction on terms of free time or access to programs. I know that that's
Right.
not completely controllable, but I appreciate you being thoughtful of it.
Yeah, and with COVID, we've actually had kind of a whole new atmosphere as far as how we operate anyways. And we've had this, sequester a lot of things into different areas, and some of our freedom of movement has been restricted as well. So we're not way off, but frankly, we've never encountered a project of this size while our facility wasn't had folks in it. So I'd like to think we're totally prepared, but we will certainly handle it as best we can. But I feel like we got a pretty good game plan.
If there are no additional questions from commissioners, we'll open it up to questions from folks here in the courthouse. Do we have any public questions or comment? Do we have any questions or comments from folks online?
No, not that I'm seeing.
Okay, we will bring it back to commissioners for discussion.
I don't have any other comments to add, but ready to make a motion if other commissioners are ready for that.
Go for it.
Commissioner Reed here. I move to approve the total project budget of the Douglas County Correctional Facility Maintenance Project in the amount of $5,639,972, and also approval of the associated guaranteed maximum price proposal GMP with Turner Construction dated July 28th, 2021 in the amount of $5,291,106.
Second.
All of those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, and item 3.3, Housing First Pilot Funding from Kansas Department of Aging and Disability Services. Jill?
Commissioners, I need to pull this item. Once again, I apologize. Some timing and miscommunications with KDADs. No concerns about this project and this contract moving forward. Just some additional timing is needed to accommodate finalizing the contract on KDAD's side. Happy to stand for questions, but I do intend to bring this back to you when I have a final version of the contract in hand and some confirmation from KDADs. So I don't have to play this game with you all again.
And it sounds like this is mostly just making sure all of our I's are dotted, T's are crossed for the contract. We are still anticipating everything moving forward, just waiting on finalizing everything before we can have it officially before the commission.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we have a project team of stakeholders that meets every 2 weeks. Our next meeting is on Friday morning. And then we actually have scheduled the first team meeting for this Housing First pilot, which is a subgroup of that larger team that meets every 2 weeks. So we have that scheduled for August 19th. So we're proceeding and planning and moving forward.
Thank you. I don't have any additional questions. Do you have? So we will look forward to seeing that return to us.
Thank you.
We will move on to appointments. I don't believe we have any appointments to consider this evening, but just want to check in.
No, not that I was made left with.
Okay, we will move on to miscellaneous. Jill, do you have anything for us from miscellaneous?
I don't have any thing. I can share that I was on a call earlier today with the health department and some other large employers, city, county, school district, kind of talking about preparation for a presentation and update for the commission next week. And just trying to share how organizations are moving forward and trying to navigate this uncertain time. And I think we're just going to continue to be in communication, and any questions that the commission has that I can pass on to the health department and the health officers, key questions that you have for them to prepare for next week, please feel free to pass those along to me, and I'll communicate them to make sure that next week's presentation is as targeted and informed as possible.
Thank you. I am looking forward to that conversation with the health officers next week. I just had a few quick miscellaneous items. Just a reminder that we do have that public hearing around public defense on Sunday at 3 o'clock at the Arts Center. And so we have information on the county website that will help folks if they want to provide written comment. They need to get that in by Friday, or they can sign up to give public comment at the meeting by sending an email to the director of the Board of Indigent Defense Services. I think that was really the only thing that I did have. Do you have miscellaneous from other commissioners?
That's what I was going to mention.
I'm looking forward to the conversation next week. So I'm going to do this all again.
Starting with the Fair Board.
So first, that was a rehearsal. Okay. User error. That wasn't Robin's mistake at all. I don't think I hit the button. First, I wanted to thank the Fair Board for all their work on the Douglas County Fair. It was, as far as I could see, it was a great event, and I appreciate everyone being safe. And the other thing I said was, I'm really encouraging our community to get vaccinated. We certainly should be proud of the percentage of people vaccinated so far, but we're not where we need to be. And just right before our meeting, we got some communication from Lawrence LMH about the rates that we're seeing in Douglas County, and that we are now considered a hot spot. And I hate to do this, but I'm just pleading with people to get information and get vaccinated. We need to do it. We don't want to overrun our hospitals, and it's just a very serious time. And I really hope people will take steps to do that. It is readily available, and I hope they'll do that.
This is Commissioner Reed. I appreciate you bringing that up, Commissioner Kelly, and I think it makes me want to add that, or just speak to the recent news around the federal eviction moratorium and how that had expired and has been reinstated in a limited way, but still reinstated with some protections for tenants in the next few months. And I'm grateful for that. And I also understand our legal system enough to know that there are, it is a very narrow scope of protection for some folks. And so eviction has a multitude of impacts, as we know, on negative impacts on people's lives. And so I just want to take the opportunity to mention that there are, if it's an issue of back rent, there are statewide assistance and local HSC, Housing Stabilization Collaborative dollars. and community advocates who can support through that process and getting documentation and talking with landlords. So please reach out to those agencies, reach out to, whoever it is that you know that might be struggling with back rent. Reach out to your community members and see what kind of support you can help facilitate for them.
Commissioners, I also wanted to pass along a reminder that we do have a community morning meeting about the law enforcement contact study. It's on Monday at 6 p.m. There's information on our CJCC hub site with the Zoom link information. We'd encourage folks to attend that as well.
Okay, if we have nothing else, we are adjourned.